60% or 70% of the students who are currently in school
Yeah.
will be doing jobs after 10 years,
Hmm.
which is not existing today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we're extremely happy to have with us a very special guest, Mr. Sujay Jairaj. Sujay ji is somebody who wears an incredible amounts of hats, many hats, whether it's his association with prestigious institutions like Jamnabai Nursery School as a trustee, Chhatrabhuj Nursery School as a chairperson, or even as a vice president at Golden Chemicals Private Limited. His interests and his passions are incredibly varied, be it the realm of sports, be it philanthropy, be it business, education, and even movie production. Also, unlike many of our guests, he's somebody in whose physical presence I actually have been in several times because he is the trustee of Jamnabai Nursery School, which is my alma mater. It's where I've studied. I think one thing Karan and I really appreciate about him is how he approaches all of these ventures with a spirit of adventure and innovation, but that is still rooted deeply in Indian ethos and Indian values. Mr. Jairaj, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Jay. And Karan, thank you so much for having me here, firstly. I'm looking forward to have a great conversation with you all.
Actually an honor for us to speak with you today. To begin the podcast, before we jump into the serious topics, we know that aside from, all the hats that you juggle in your professional life, you are deeply involved with sports, be it skiing, badminton, shooting, and cycling. So tell us about your journey with sports, at what age did you get involved in sports and, what role has it played in your life?
Right. So, in fact, sports has been a part of my life since I was a kid. In fact, my father was a badminton player and he used to win state level tournaments. So, I've always seen him play while growing up. And likewise, I started playing badminton when maybe I was around senior KG. Then, of course, I very consistent. I kept at it. I used to love it. And through my education, I have always been a more of a sports person rather than an academic person. And I always think that once you're a sports person, automatically your discipline, your focus. There are various life skills that sports teach you. So picks and other things automatically come to you easily.
Right.
So everything around my life revolves around sport. As you see my backdrop, you will see a ski picture and you'll see a cycle. Even in my office, I make sure that I'm always surrounded with sports. It keeps me motivated. So, for example, I used to cycle a lot in school. I used to go to my school, which is Jamnabai Nursery School, on cycle when I was a student. And in 2010, I started this group called Mumbai Cycling Enthusiasts, which has become the largest cycling group in the world with 20,000 members. So, sports has been a passion for me and I learn a lot from sports. So that's why I keep at it, because I think fitness is very important, teaches you a lot. And especially now, during this time of COVID, one realizes that, sports is a part of life.
Right.
So, sir, actually, just picking up on where you've left off, if it's possible, because I know it'll be tricky for you since you've been involved in sports since like senior KG or even earlier, but could you think of any one specific time where a skill or a virtue जो आपने sports से सीखा, you were able to apply in your professional life?
Right, that's a great question. I'll tell you, I was very aggressive in sports always, because I used to be a singles badminton player, always trying to win. But what sports teaches you also is how to take loss in a nice way, how to take it easy in life. So, in many times in business, there are ups and downs, but sports teaches you how not to react, but in fact, go back to your table, work on it, and then respond. So, I always feel that you should never react to a situation, but you should always respond over time. So I think that's what sport has really taught me.
And so in the realm of sports, there's actually another thing I was curious about. Aside from the roles it plays in your life, another way it's now starting to play a role in your life is you're venturing into producing motivational sports films. We know that you're associated with even the Saina Nehwal biopic. So could you tell us a little bit about how you decided to want to back this film and to enter this realm?
Right. So, education and sports, has been a passion for me. My business has been chemicals. Since my company is 80 years old, started by my great grandfather. So, in terms of, as you know, I just said, I love badminton. I've been playing it from when I was a kid. In 2015, when Saina Nehwal was playing the World Championship and she won that particular match and she became world number one. So, I did have a link with her because I was a national level badminton player myself.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's reach out to her. And this would be a great inspirational story of a girl coming from a small town, with not really financial means of supporting her by her parents. She is fought beyond all odds, be it financial, be it personal, from a small town, no facilities, and actually become world number one. Beating the Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, British in the game of badminton. So that's a fantastic story, I thought, which India needs to know, because this will inspire a generation of players and teach everyone that, once you have a determination and a passion, there's no looking back. You have to give your best in whatever you do, be it a sport, be it a business, but give it your best and just go for it. There will be ups and downs, but never give up.
Right. So just a follow up to that, we also read that you might be interested in, backing other sports films also. So are you planning that as well?
So, I have 4 new stories coming up. One is on shooting. So I'm currently a national level shooter also.
Right.
Pistol shooting, I think.
Pistol shooter.
Yeah.
So there is this boy called Saurabh Chaudhary, who is the world number one from India. He's from a very small town from the western side of UP. And again, this guy, when I went to meet him in the village, they don't have any means. They don't have money. They don't even have the facilities. Forget the money. So when you go to the range, I met his coach. So the story is actually on the coach, not on Saurabh. Saurabh is part of the movie. When I went to the range, these guys are standing, like you have to shoot with a pistol, right? They don't have a pistol. So they're standing holding a brick. So just imagine they are training the hand holding a brick. And now, again, they've become world number one. If you if you've seen the Rocky movie, Rocky 4 especially, where he's training on the mountains and the Russian is training with all the technology. It's a similar situation where this boy is training with a brick in his hand, where all the people in the world are training with all the technology possible. But this guy is actually going and winning the World Cup. So, it's just an inspirational story. And similarly, I have 3 more movies coming up. So I don't want to say too much because I can tell you one. When it comes out. Yeah.
No, but definitely these are stories that need to be told, and we are glad that you're backing these stories. Sir, coming now to your professional career in the field of education, we wanted your take on the current scenario, especially in 2020. Online schooling and schooling from home has been one of the unexpected trends. How have you been coping with this trend, and what are some insights into the future of education, that you've, realized through this year?
Right. Firstly, this whole COVID situation, even though it was going around in the world, to India with the lockdown came at a very sudden pace, and, hats off to all the teachers around India, be it school teachers or higher education teachers, on how quickly they've adapted to technology in providing education at online. And it was at a very fast pace. Of course, we as an educational institute provided all the trainings, we provided laptops, software, hardware, whatever possible. But in the end, it is the teachers who are delivering the classes from home, with all the other aspects they have to look at, including family, kids, managing a house. On top of that, providing education online from home. So I think it was firstly a big hats off to all the teachers. Secondly, I think even the students have adapted very fast, be it the younger ones or the older ones. Only challenge is, of course, the screen time has really increased, which is not a very good thing. Secondly, I personally feel very bad for the students because what they've lost out on is the physical aspect of sports, the facilities of the school, also the social aspect where you meet other students, you interact. Because I personally believe that education has 5 aspects to it, which
Okay.
is academics, sports, extracurricular activities, life skills, and values. So we can kind of give few of them online, but the holistic development cannot happen online. So we are all waiting for the school education to start again.
Yeah. One thing though, sir, that I found very interesting is people have been dragging their feet, not everybody, but people have been dragging their feet to incorporate technology, saying, people will not be able to adapt it, it'll be too difficult. But when a crisis came, it's not a good situation, but it's actually propelled the movement towards adopting tech much more and much more quicker. Yeah, adoption itna jaldi nahi ho pata otherwise.
No, totally. I think adoption has been very, very fast. And technology is here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. But I also feel that once situation improves and students start coming back to school, that will be the primary source of education. But there will be more technology used inside the classroom. Technology can never replace a teacher, according to me, and it should not replace a teacher, even if it can. But it should be able to aid and help the teacher in delivering better education, is what I believe.
So we also wanted to know your take on two things specifically, from the new education policy that has come out this year. Firstly, it has been recommended that, wherever possible, the medium of instruction for kids till 5th standard should be the local language. Now, do you think this policy firstly is correct? And, if so, will it be effectively implemented in most of the schools?
See, there are, pros and cons to it. Firstly, according to me, what they've said is the language should be your mother tongue. Now, the mother tongue it's impossible to have that kind of, because, for example, in my school, I would have people from around the country, 20 different mother tongues. So it's to provide education in so many different languages. So what I believe is, firstly, English is a very important language in our country, and that is a benefit for our country on China also. So we are better in English than China, and that's why our students and people from the country can work around the world. So English is a very important language. That said, our national language is also a very, very important language, Hindi. Along with that, state language again is a very important language. And on top of that, mother tongue is very important to learn at your home. So, for example, in my schools, what we follow is we have an English school, followed by our national language, followed by the state language, which we have a school in Maharashtra and Gujarat. So we teach Marathi and teach Gujarati in Gujarat. As well as we provide certain options, additional options of Indian as well as foreign languages. So we provide Gujarati in Bombay also, as well as we provide Spanish and French. So those are additional languages. So being multilingual is always of an advantage for everyone. And I don't think personally it's possible to teach a subject in a mother tongue in an English school.
So another thing from the new education policy, they are introducing vocational courses from standard 6, which can be a good thing for kids. But how feasible is it to implement for, from the school's point of view? Because, very few kids might be interested in a certain vocation. And then, to hire so many teachers for so many different kids, how feasible is that going to be?
So, see, the thought is not bad, honestly. It is a good thought to, teach some skills, vocational skills to the students, which can make them job worthy, even if they don't continue education after 10th standard. But, I think, again, these are, in private schools, there have been various options available anyway. So I think what government is looking at is at the mass, in smaller towns, villages, to teach vocational skills. So with the population, vocational education is what will get them jobs. So again, the thought is a great thing. But as you said, feasibility to get teachers is going to be a challenge. So we will need schools to train teachers in vocational skills. So which is what the government will plan. So the national education policy is a great thought, a forward-looking step, but it will take 20 to 30 years to actually implement each step. So the government needs to plan every step year on year now.
Yeah. Definitely. It's very ambitious, but I think as we were doing research about this for this interview, the feasibility of certain steps and also how long it will take to implement, I don't think it reflects in the wording of the policy. These turnaround
Exactly.
times, like we said, are decades. It's not
It will
like,
take,
6
yeah.
months, 8 months.
It will take 20 to 30 years in a country like India, or even more, honestly, because along the path, many decisions will be removed, governments will change, so it will be up and down.
Yeah.
But I hope, each government that comes takes this step ahead. See, because, one big thing for me is education can change the future of any country. Especially like a country like India, where we are still a developing nation. It is education that will take our country to a developed nation.
Yeah.
With 65% of the population being under 30 years of age, you can imagine the number of students that will be generated over the years to come. So I used to always say that, in a country like India, there is no designation of Minister of Education. It was always at the HRD ministry. So at least now they have a Minister for Education and spotlight on education for the future. There will be mistakes that will be made, but at least the thought process is in the right step.
Right.
Absolutely, because there's so much potential to be tapped that we can either accelerate our growth immensely or we will miss out on the opportunity of a lifetime for our nation. I really think so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On that side, on one hand, if you see all the Indians who are working around the world, especially in the western side, America and US, UK and other countries, 40 to 50% of the staff, be it NASA, be it Microsoft, be it Intel, are Indians. So what happens is there's something which has been done right also in Indian education system, because whatever said and done, be it call it rote learning, call it tough, but that has made us Indians very tough in terms of dealing with the world also. So there have been certain good things that have happened in the past. We have lost out on the creativity and the innovation side of the thing. So we need to focus on that aspect. But I don't think we should completely let go of our old system, because the Indian education system is very strong, and we should take the good parts of it and let go of the weak parts of it.
So, sir, we've spoken about more recent issues, but now I thought it might be worthwhile to take a step back and look at your insights about some broader trends. Firstly, आपका हाथ रहा है behind the success of a number of educational institutions. If we look at it from strictly a business point of view now, what would you say are some key factors for the financial success of an educational institution, according to you?
Right. So, firstly, as I said, education and sports is my passion. It's not my business. But of course, when you're running an institution, you have to make sure that the financials are strong, in order to grow in life. So, my main thing is, people want quality now and in the future. So never compromise on any quality, provide the best, and students and parents will in fact appreciate the fact, that you are actually providing the top quality, and the school will always prosper. For example, when I started my new school in Kandivali, which is Chhatrapur Nursery School, we have a beautiful area of 3 acres overlooking the national park. Now, instead of spending money on marketing, where I would spend a couple of crore rupees, to tell everyone that I'm starting a new school, I didn't spend 1 rupee on marketing, and I rather said that let's put all the money on sports infrastructure. So I created fantastic sports infrastructure, with international approved athletic track, international approved football turf. We have a rock climbing wall, shooting range, indoor badminton court. I mean, the work. And I'm like, people come. And when they see this, my marketing is done. I don't need,
Word of mouth.
So what I'm saying is, there are ways and means to provide top quality. You should never compromise on what you're offering.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, besides that, though, I have been fortunate enough to build schools with international standards of infrastructure, I personally think in the end, what matters is the teacher. Now, if there is a school in a slum, and the teacher is teaching under a tree, if the teacher is good, that student will learn as much as he's learning in my school itself. So, at the end, we have a teacher. You have to give all the facilities the teacher needs, and the teacher can teach either in a fancy school or also under a tree. then it also depends on the students how much they want to learn. So, you know, yeah.
So for our next question, sir, I too belong to a business family like you, and we run cake and dessert shops across India. And I know that with every family business come certain unique challenges, such as an informal culture and structure, challenges with succession planning. The decision making also gets tricky because of the generation gap. And along with that, there's an additional hurdle that you face when running a prestigious brand like Jamnabai, where you have to strike a balance between maintaining the legacy and the vision of the original founders, but you also have to make changes and adapt to the demands of the times. So with such unique family business related challenges, how do you deal with them, and how are you overcoming such challenges?
I think that's a very interesting question. Because there are a lot of challenges one faces, and it's with time you learn how to overcome certain challenges. But I think the key over here is, right from the beginning, to be very professional, to have great discipline in place, and also to know and understand your strengths and weaknesses. So, when I started going to my educational institutes, I was sitting with each and every department on learning what are the basics, because it doesn't mean that if I'm a part of the family, I should straight away come on top. So the idea is to learn from each and every department, give respect to the ideas and thoughts of every person, learn, and then of course take a informed decision on what is right and what is wrong. One thing over here, whatever I have done in my life, I would give credit to my parents, because my parents have been very open in terms of listening to my thoughts, my ideas, and in fact giving me a lot of flexibility, in terms of taking decisions. I have faltered, I have taken right decisions. It's a part of the cycle. But the idea is also to give your child that freedom to take a call sometimes. See, because it can't be extreme both the ways. So you should not give too much freedom, as well as you should not keep too much, tightness also. So, because life is about lifelong learning, which is again I've learned from my dad, because he's always up to newer thoughts, newer ideas. He's always looking up to the future, So I think the professionalism, the discipline, and mainly, you have to keep self-educating yourself. And now with online courses, it's very easy to kind of refresh your memories about basic education on whichever industry you are in. So I keep doing some of the other course in education. Like for example, in this lockdown, I've done 2 courses from Harvard for education leadership.
Wow.
So the idea is to utilize your time in a nice way.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another question I wanted to ask you, sir. Now I've kind of alluded to this, but I'm a consultant as well, and mere work experience mein, I'm aware of this phenomenon where you can get insights about a system जब आप उस system को बाहर से from an external point of view देख रहे हैं, ना कि अंदर से from outside looking in. So for the next question, I wanted to use your perspective as maybe an outsider looking into our public school system. अगर आप महाराष्ट्र का या even India for that matter, if you could rehaul the public school curriculum and add 3 things or remove 3 things, what would these 3 things be?
Okay, now that's a tough question.
It's a tough one.
Because honestly, what I feel is the education system planning has been done quite well in terms of location of plots, what is a part of the curriculum. But what I feel is not happening right is the execution bit, the implementation. So what I feel is with the scale of numbers of students that we have in our country, planning is of course very important, but more important is the implementation and seeing that finally what is planned is actually reaching the the end in terms of each school in a village or a small town. Because I work with a lot of I have my own foundation. It's called Urvashi Foundation. It's on my mom's name, where I try and support a lot of underprivileged schools. So when I go to these schools, I mean, they have nothing. I mean, they don't have benches. The students don't have shoes to wear. So they're actually sitting on the ground. Now, books have been prescribed, but they don't get the books. So I feel curriculum-wise, if you see the master planning of the book, that is there, be it at the state or be it in the center, it's fantastic. I mean, I don't think really change too many things.
Okay.
The thing is the implementation has to happen. And actually reach the end goal, the end student.
Also, maybe
Definitely.
life skill training can be incorporated even by the government, because these are also skills that are very essential in life, but they are often ignored. Even mental health is ignored, and kids don't know what depression is. So maybe life skill training should be incorporated to adjust to today's generation and prepare them properly for the future.
Totally. I mean, life skills has to be there. Also, we have to face the reality. We should know what's right, what's wrong. We can't be living in a world which is a fantasy world. I mean, sometimes the full online culture, is another world which is not true. All the social media that we look at, I mean, people only posting happy pictures, for example. And as a child, if I keep seeing someone traveling the world, I mean, that's not really what the truth is.
Right.
So we have to be very focused on what is real and what is not, and our kids have to learn that. I'm talking about kids, I mean students as well as my kids, I mean.
Yeah, because that's very rightly put, because no one is sharing their failures online, but everyone's going through those failures, but we can't see it, and we feel like I'm the only one who's failing and no one else is failing. So that is...
And on the other hand, people are becoming very judgmental and also very kind of loud, I can say, in terms of their opinions, which might not always make sense. So, I mean, everyone should have the opinions, but we have to respect someone else's opinion also. So the idea is to always, I personally feel there's nothing like right or wrong. Everyone has their own way of doing things, and we have to respect each other's culture, each other's thoughts, and each other's opinions, and that's how we can have a peaceful world in future. If you see, each and every country is also becoming very opinionated, be it India, be it China, be it US, be it UK, but this is not the culture we should look at. If you see in 1991 with globalization, liberalization, currently we are on the opposite trend. We are becoming more nationalistic. I mean, of course, I am very proud of my country. We have to be nationalistic in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that another country is wrong. We have to we have to put ourselves in someone else's shoe and come to a amicable kind of a solution for anything. Now this can be a country specific thing. It can be two friends talking. It can be two business partners talking. But we have to put ourselves in someone else's shoe to understand what that person is going through.
We've touched on this, sir, a number of times already, but I understand that teaching, like making students future ready, teaching them the skills of tomorrow, such as training in VR, AR, robotics, coding, is something that you are passionate about. And before we go into the nitty-gritties of this, could you tell us a little bit more about the Innovation Studio Zero 2.0?
So basically, the idea of starting the Innovation Hub was to have the innovation and creativity side of our students. As I said, in India, we are very good in math and science, but the Western world is better in innovation and creativity. So we need to teach our next generation how to create new things. That's why I call it Zero 2.0, because Zero was introduced in India. And we need more innovations in the future where India can be proud of. So, of course, we are teaching over here robotics, coding, programming, 3D printing, design technology. But the idea is to make students think in a different way, come up with your own creativity, and try and innovate solutions which are not there yet. Now, for example, what is said is 60% or 70% of the students who are currently in school will be doing jobs after 10 years, which is not existing today. So, for example, 10 years back, there was no data science or data analytics. And all our engineers are getting into data science now. So similarly, 10 years down the line, with the VR and AR that you mentioned, the full job scenario is going to be so different. In fact, I think it's going to be tremendous unemployment, honestly, because technology is kind of taking over the employment. So that's why students need to learn life skills to be able to adapt to whatever comes in future. Because we can't predict what's going to come. We can't tell them that, okay, you're going to do this job after 15 years. Because this does not exist today. There'll be so much robots. There'll be so much, technology that we'll have to adapt on how to sustain technology with employment.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to go deeper in the core. So there is one kahavat that's often said ki, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. So we need to teach maybe children these deeper skills like thinking laterally, thinking creatively, innovating, solving problems. As opposed to, textbook mein ye fact likha tha, ye yaad karo. Because the processes keep changing. Technologies keep changing.
Exactly.
Yeah, even the government has realized this, because in the education policy, now they are they've asked schools to start teaching coding from 6th standard.
Yeah.
That is also a good change that is coming in.
Yeah.
So I think this interdisciplinary approach is a great approach for the future, and government has realized that. Coding is a part of it, but again, we should not focus too much on coding and technology also, because there are various different aspects. So it should be a part of the whole system that is there.
Yeah. So on that forward-looking note, I think, Mr. Jairaj, let's end our conversation today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. Drop a comment in the comment section below about what your biggest insight from this interview was. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you'd like to see more such interviews, hit the subscribe button. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for this lovely conversation. And I look forward to watching this interview. And all the best to you guys.
Thank you.